Welcome to this episode of Radio's Night Show here in Octo, where we are going to show you some more games that have been exhibited at the Radio's Festival in Vienna in the MuseumsQuarters in the Wallick. It's going to be great. We're going to talk to developers, see their games, and much more. So stay on.
This is the third day running you've called me in. Hurt someone. You think it's murder? I'd like to speak to a lawyer now. You have no murder weapon. You have nothing. And all these stories we've been telling each other. Just that. Stories.
Is a game with a lot of videos. That's what I've like when you read on the internet. That's sort of like the thing that people say. It's a lot of videos, yeah. But it's done it's a narrative game done in a really interesting way, and it's one of these games where I'm really happy that it's come out and has had this amazing impact. And look, here is Sam, who made the game, and give it up for Sam, who made her story. So. Look, I love it when people use the same hardware because it just...
This is amazing. Everybody just by accident has a MacBook Air.
And then it all works. So, and Sam, that game is about 2 weeks old.
Well, it's probably much older. It has been released 2 weeks ago.
So should we just talk to him while he plugs it in, because that's the best.
Let's ask him really hard-hitting questions right now.
Yeah. So what? Can you spell her story backwards? Don't do it, that would do it. So Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then also tell us about her story, because it is a special game, and it's one of these games where you would say, sadly, people would say that, you know, it's kind of like against all odds, it is, you know, it's making its waves, and I think it's amazing. I think it's great, and we need more of these games, but let's start with your name. What have you done so far?
Sam, let's start with your name.
Okay. Thanks, Rami. So I'm Sam Barley. I've been working in games for kind of over 10 years, mainly doing kind of console games for publishers. So people might have played Silent Hill Shattered Memories, was probably the best thing that I've made for publishers. And about over a year ago, I decided to go indie. So, you know, this was an opportunity to make a game that was the kind of thing that publishers weren't willing to kind of fund, and kind of a personal, interesting take on narrative.
And how did you have an idea like this in your head, like for a long time, or was it one of these things where like, what sort of like game can I do with with the time I have, the budget I have, or was it a little bit of both?
I mean, I've always wanted to do a kind of police procedural crime game, and I've pitched that like 100 times. In fact, Silent Hill Shattered Memories was originally pitched to Konami as a game about a police detective. And that was the kind of thing that publishers would always throw back at me, and they weren't up for it because they kind of said, it's fine, you can watch police shows on TV, you can read books about them, you don't need them in games. And I think that was kind of an acknowledgement that this kind of genre drives so much from the kind of the personal stories, from character interaction, and that's kind of an area that games sometimes struggle with. So that was kind of made it uncomfortable for them to kind of explore that. So when I decided I was going to go indie and do something myself, my brain naturally kind of wandered to this sort of area in this genre.
So do you like want to show and tell us a little bit about the game? Because what is the best?
Let's see like 10 seconds of the game, because it is very kind of it's very sensitive to spoilers. So it's got a kind of slow intro just to force you into the mood, make sure you're actually concentrating and chilled out. So here you go. So the game itself basically takes place entirely on a crappy old 90s kind of Windows-style desktop. So the idea here is just old police computer, kind of in the archive room or something, and you've been logged into this database here, which is a police database full of video footage taken from a series of police interviews. So the first thing you do, you can see there's already the word murder in there. So you click search. You click search. No.
So it works just like a real old 90s computer.
Yeah. It's. I think you might have to. Yeah, or maybe you have to reboot the computer, or.
Ooh, this is live.
This is live. Live stuff happens.
Ooh.
Well, nothing else has gone wrong on this stream.
No, that's true. So this is all pre-planned.
Yeah.
This is what you get when you plug in something halfway through a stream.
I don't know if that was a compliment or a criticism, Rami. I'll take it as a compliment. That is.
This is like
CGI here. This is real.
This is all real.
This is all real.
It's indie.
This is so real.
This is
As real as the Uncharted 4 demo.
that we do as developers. It's like stuff's not working 90% of the
Yeah.
time.
You search in the database, you type in a word, so here murder, and basically you will get all the clips in the database in which the woman being interviewed uses that word. And the friction comes from the fact that because you're kind of in this limited access mode, you can only get 5 clips at a time. And the clips are presented chronologically, so if you use kind of popular words, you're only going to see stuff from the early stages of the interview. And if you want to see the deep, juicy, kind of interesting stuff, you need to think of more unique words, you need to use kind of clever phrases. And so the idea is that you watch these clips, you listen, you pick up on names, places, you can kind of free associate, come up with words that you think might be associated with the case, have wild stabs in the dark, have guesses. So in that way, it kind of replicates the feel of being a detective in that you're paying attention, you're listening to what she's saying, you're taking notes, but there is that kind of element of chance and serendipity that sometimes kind of comes into play. So you watch these bits of video. And so this is all kind of real video run through like an old 90s VHS player and everything, so it's all very, very authentic. Luckily we have subtitles so we can see what's happening. So a big thing about the game is that it is very non-linear. Because of the fact that you're kind of randomly accessing this database, pulling things out based on the kind of theme or the words used, you're not getting everything in this kind of straightforward order, which is one of the things that forces you to kind of infer the context, figure out what's going on, put the pieces together. And it's kind of a really cool way to tell a story because it engages your imagination directly. And I think that's really, really important in a video game because all stories take place in your imagination anyway. But I think in a video game where you're actually participating, doubly so. And so the cool mechanic here is that you are kind of directly having this, essentially a dialogue with the game where you're seeing stuff, then feeding more words and more data into the system. And so there's this kind of back and forth, and there's quite a pace to it because the clips are fairly short in length. So there are kind of points where it feels like you're actually having a dialogue with this woman rather than just sat there accessing a database.
So is it also about like, if you want to move on to the story, so you have to pick up on those keywords and make sure you sort of like narrow down that search because you might, or do you, like, is there a point where you go like, oh, I want to know what sort of like happened next, but I don't know what, like I haven't paid enough attention, what words I need to look for, or is it kind of like your own desire to know more about it might frustrate you if you haven't paid attention in that sort of like sense. Is that how it kind of like works? Imagine.
I'm struggling to understand that question.
So am I, to be honest.
So am I, actually, now that I've said it. It's kind of
I think what you're trying to ask is if you are trying to elicit the feeling of wanting to watch things chronologically but not being able to because you haven't been paying enough attention.
Yeah,
and you
because
don't know what word to search for to get the next chronological thing.
because you said it's about keywords, so the more common the keyword is, the more in the beginning of the story it is. But the further down you go in the timeline, do you have to sort of like use more specific keywords?
Yes, I mean you'll pick up on. So obviously you could sit there and go, well, this is a murder investigation. What kind of words might crop up and kind of throw those in there. But then you'll be watching a clip, and she might use a name or a place or a verb or you might actually pick up on there are certain phrases that she uses when she's speaking that you kind of pick up on and you drill down on those. And so there's lots of different ways you can attack it. You can play it like a kind of word association game. You can take notes of people, places, times, events, and kind of follow up on those.
I think the interesting idea, it sounds way more like the interesting idea is that there is no right order of watching these, that it's whatever the player comes up with is ultimately what they get.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's really interesting about it for players is, a key feature of it is you never see the questions that are asked by the detectives. What you're only seeing is the woman's answers. So when you watch a clip, there's several layers. You're kind of trying to infer what was the question asked. You're comparing it with other clips you've seen to try and figure out exactly what she's talking about. There are lots of kind of questions you might have. And so you can watch the same clip 2 or 3 times with new bits of information, and suddenly you're, oh, okay, now I understand what's happening here, and people have these kind of sequences of kind of revelation, and they suddenly go, oh, and then they'll type something in, and then magically, the game kind of confirms what they were thinking, and so that's a feeling that's really, really cool.
Awesome. That's awesome.
There's obviously like the other layer is that I think Rockstar tried with L.A. Noire, like the idea of using emotions on video game characters. We're not quite at the point where we can 100% do that. You obviously went with real recorded video. Was that a challenge? Is that like an important part of the game for you? Is that it was like real people, or was it just that computer graphics couldn't do the same idea justice?
Part of it came out of kind of an amount of frustration. So before I made this game, I worked on a title for about 3 years that was cancelled, and on that title I actually worked with Viva Caster on that, and so we did about a year's worth of motion capture, full performance capture on that project. And there was this kind of weird, perverse thing about it where we would shoot on this huge sound stage, technicians, hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of equipment. The actors would be there in their kind of leotards with no makeup or costume or anything. And we'd get the performance we wanted, and we were trying to get a really intimate, kind of naturalistic performance. And then, months later, all that motion capture data's been pulled into the computers, it's been cleaned up, we've had animators working on it, it's been put on a 3D model, and we'd be sat there in a boardroom, and we'd have 2 screens. We'd have on one side like Unreal Engine running all of this performance capture, and on the other side we'd have like the video reference from the day, some crappy handheld camera of the actors with no costume. And you'd look at the crappy video footage and you'd be like, oh, the expression on that face there, or that little moment that the 2 actors share or whatever, that's perfect. Not seeing it in the game. And then it would take weeks more of kind of hand key tweaking and stuff to get it. So. And obviously that's a necessity if you're making a game like that. But there was always in the back of my mind, there's this kind of, why are we making it so hard for ourselves? Why are we doing all this work when you can just point a camera and capture this stuff? So I think when I was thinking about this game, originally I was thinking I want to make something to do with police interviews, and that was it. So it could have been CGI, it could have been anything. And then I just kind of woke up one morning and the idea was in my head. It was like video, this database idea, police interviews, and suddenly that just made so much sense to me, because here was a way for me as an indie to actually focus on performance, to work with an actor without having to spend all the money on CGI. Here was a way to, a frustration I always had, even working at the kind of highest end of AAA, was as a writer, you want to write words that have subtext, you want to write very succinct, naturalistic dialogue. But in video games, because there are so many barriers to that getting across, and as well because a lot of dialogue in video games is very much about, here is your mission, here is what you need to do, things tend to be very direct and lack that subtext. And so here was an opportunity to create a story, create a game that was about subtext. It was about watching these clips and understanding what is actually happening beneath the surface, what is being implied in these clips. So having the video drive that for me was just perfect, because yes, now you've got a real human being on screen. You can read their face, you can see their body gestures, you can see this, and you've got amazing hair physics, skin shaders, all for free. Yeah.
Would you say, like, this is a question, because when I saw the game for the first time, when I heard about it, I thought, wow, this is somebody that is placing a lot of trust into gamers to like pick up on all of those clues and like figure out like how this subtext works. Like, most games kind of grab you by the hand and like just sort of like go like, okay, now press forward, now press A, and you're just like type a word and figure it out. Was that scary? Like, how do you get that balance right? Was it just, did you just put a lot of trust into players, or did you how did you figure this out?
I think I knew that I wanted to make something that would be different and would essentially be doing all the things that I couldn't do when I was working for a larger, bigger budget kind of audience, working for publishers that were kind of driven by focus groups and stuff like that. So I guess for me it was thinking, if I make a game that does go out of its way to trust players and put more in their heads, then that will be a good thing for a subset of players. So there'll be a bunch of people who would really dig this experience, and hopefully that's enough that I won't lose my shirt. But I think as well, I mean, you see stuff like even things like Bloodborne, right, and the Souls series, the way they tell narrative and how people have kind of really got into that, where again they're not forcing it down your throat, they just leave it there for you to figure out and put pieces together. So I think there's a more general push which is kind of counter to your AAA games with checklists and markers all over the maps. And so I guess there was a level of confidence I had there that there will be some people who will get this because they have an appetite for games that are going to just let them loose with the story and kind of give them that control.
I think a lot of this is also, as a game designer, a lot of it is sort of like the fear that the player won't understand the game the way you want them to understand. So, there's a lot of, like in the early games, even when I worked in the early games, like there's a lot of like, you kind of like want to handhold the player through, but you don't, as in like, you're always afraid that the player doesn't do it in the right way, that they miss the joke here or a beat there and stuff, which is, as you said, like leads to force feeding like narrative, which we have seen countless times with cutscenes and or even forced cutscenes, and and there have been over the history, I think, the last even 25 years, I think only a handful of games that have done it really well. It's really bizarre. With narrative, there's about 10, 15, 20 games that have done it really, really well in that sort of sense, and have also gone out and tried it in a totally different approach, like you've done here with this one. Just in general, how long did the development of the game take?
So the game took just over a year to make, and I spent probably half of that, or a bit over half of that, just kind of developing the story, the structure, the script, and then kind of running that through some big number crunching things to kind of sculpt it into shape. And that was a big thing for me, was the games that I've worked on that have gone well through pure fluke and circumstance, I've actually had quite a lot of time up front to focus on the story above all else. Not just the story, but like how the mechanic's going to tie into the story. What is the setup of the world, so that when the large team jumps on it, you can explain it to them, and there's a logic behind why you're doing all these things.
That's very cool.
And so with this, it was very much, that's what I want to do with this. And because there's no publisher and I don't have to have lots of meetings where I explain all this stuff, then I'm going to sit and I'm going to, I went away and I watched hours and hours of footage of police interviews, read all the official police manuals, and just went really deep into how this stuff works and the mechanics, and that completely informed how the story was then developed, kind of the overall feel of it.
It's a lot of research.
This is like method development instead of method acting, like really getting in the role of that sort of, like who would create this system, who would create these videos, like how would it sounds like it's like method development.
Absolutely. I terrified my wife's friends, because she used to work in our local library, and I wanted to get hold of all the official police handbooks about interrogation, investigation of homicides, and so I had to order those via the British Library, and they were delivered to the local library. So I went to pick them up, and the guy there knew my wife, and then he saw her in the street later, and he was like, "Do you know the stuff that your husband's getting out?" And she was like, "Oh no, that's for a game he's making." The guy was like, "Oh."
Do you have one of these search histories on Google that you are far too afraid of because it contains
I'm so deep there with just making Silent Hill games. But no, Silent Hill games visual reference on Google Images. If I close my eyes, the things I see now just from those Google searches, I've just been ruined, scarred as a human.
You're probably in all the lists there are in terms of people being flagged for using Google or anything, just because look at this guy, first he's looking about silent stuff and now he's looking about murder stuff. Oh my God! So be careful.
Yeah.
You should do a fun game, like a happy game.
That is what my mother constantly asks. Can't you make a nice game like Candy Crush?
How to make a game about bunnies.
So the game's out. Where can people buy the game? What platforms is it on? And how many pints of beer does it?
They can get it everywhere. So it's on PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone. So you can get it from the App Store, you can get it from Steam, Humble, goodoldgames.com. We can get it from the website, herstorygame.com. And it costs now, it's about, I was going to try and give you the euro price, but I'm rubbish at euros. So it's $4.99 or $5.99 depending on different stores. But it's essentially very little money for a very exciting experience.
€3 to €5, £3.
A quarter of a pint.
Although I think the Steam euro conversion, which is quite contentious, is not optimal. So,
As a European, I'm very aware of that.
but it's still absolutely worth every penny.
That's amazing. That's it's kind of like, because you released it like 2 weeks ago, and as I said in the beginning, you know, it's sort of like a lot of people have picked up on it, and reviews have picked up on it, and kind of like snowballed from there, and you know, it's been just growing and growing and growing. And you're busy, like you are.
Yeah, I'm tired.
I'm tired. Oh.
The wonderful advantage of digital is you can sell copies to loads of people, but if there's just one of you, you also have to field tech support inquiries and press inquiries from all those people. And whilst very clever people have set up these systems that will allow you to automate, some naive developers might, on their first indie project, think, it's fine, I can just do all this as an Excel sheet, this is fine, I've got my Steam codes. and then now you realize that's quite time consuming, and but in a good way, you know.
But that's good to know that you're everything. You're the sales guy, you're the technical guy, you're the support guy, you're the developer guy.
He's even the actor in the videos.
He's the actor in the videos.
That's makeup, the incredible power of makeup.
Also interesting to know, right? And with this, I think, what's the website of the game? So people.
Again, the website is www.herstorygame.com.
Without a dash, just one long phrase.
Seamless.
All letters together.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably like period.com.
Yes, there is a dot before the com. We didn't break that convention. That was the one convention this game keeps to.
You're not allowed to break that convention. You know, that's the .com convention. Can't break it.
Well, it could be like .org.
And it
Good.
doesn't, if people are worried that it doesn't...
Is this part of the game that it sort of like turns blue? Like,
No, I think that's just my screensaver. Oh. If you're worried that it maybe looks like there isn't enough gameplay in it, if you sneak into this rubbish bin here, there's you got your info file there, and someone's got a hacked copy here of some traditional gameplay. So if you ever feel like it's getting too much, there's too much narrative, there's not enough traditional gameplay, you can sit and play this game. And
I mean, I've just been wondering what is in the readmes, to be honest, but we'll keep that a mystery for some other time.
I think, you know what really happened, Sam? I think this is the game you intended to make, the one that you just showed, and you wanted to build everything else around it.
That was my free-to-play.
Yeah.
App
But you felt you
Store
needed to
success
put like a
story.
narrative around
Just
it.
wrap the
to
narrative
sort
wrapper
of hold
around
it
it.
together, yeah.
So that's what it was. You're
Video game
just too afraid
development.
to admit that this is how it actually really works. But
That's my son's favourite bit. He invited his friend round to our house to come and play, and they sat and played that for half an hour, and they think that's kind of the game. And so whenever I see his friend in the playground, he's like, "Hey, is your game out?" Yeah. And
So I think it's a really awesome game, and we need more of those, definitely, I think. And it's awesome. Thanks very much for taking your time. A big round of applause, please, for Sam.
There's a lot of aspects of making a video game that people don't really think about when they start making games, and that's especially true for independent developers, but it's equally true for AAA developers. Like, making games is hard, and a lot of problems that we end up trying to solve have been solved before, right? So organizing a game jam is something that thousands of people have done, but it's really hard to find good information on how to run a game jam. And making a narrative FMV video game is something that has been done since the 1970s, 1980s, but there's not that much information on how to make them and what you have to keep track of. So I started thinking about that, and I started realizing that it's really hard to find documentation on how to make video games. So one of the things I do in life is I travel a lot. I travel to a lot of places. I travel basically continuously. I have about a flight every 3 days, and it takes me all around the world. I go to Asia, to Africa, to the Middle East, to America, to South America. Europe, all around Europe. Like basically, I kind of try and go everywhere and meet local developers. And one of the things I noticed is that even though that information is already really hard to find in English, if you're not fluent at English, it's practically impossible to find any of that information. So I wanted to make a place that would have a lot of information on how to make video games for English-speaking people. And then I realized that if I really wanted to make this a proper thing, I would have to make sure that it also jumps that language barrier. So we're trying to collect all that information and then translate it into all of the major languages in the world. So we're trying to translate it into Russian, into Chinese, into Arabic, into Portuguese and Spanish, because there are amazing game development communities out there all over the world. I was in Malta the other day, which has a beautiful game development community. I know you've been to the Middle East recently, where there's an amazing game development community. These people are all making games that aren't based on what we know about video games, on their own perspective, on their own history, their own culture. And some of those games are just really, really good and really interesting and are things that we don't have in our medium yet. So I want to help. I want to help facilitate that. So the initiative is called gamedev.world. It's a website. It's not quite a wiki. It is a curated place that collects interesting documentation, interesting content about video game creation in specific. So not about, it's not reviews, not consumer focused. It's really specifically developer focused.
And how are you going about getting articles? Do you have a board of directors for articles?
Yeah, so basically what I've been doing in the last few months is I've been trying to get a team together that can figure out what the most relevant content is right now, what good content is with regards to just sort of the timeless act of video game creation, but also what is relevant right now. Like, what should you know about iOS versus Android? What should you know about making a premium game like we do versus making a freemium game like some other studios do? Like, what should you know about design, about development, about audio, about business, about marketing? Like, how do you release a game on Steam? You know, that kind of questions I want to answer. And to get that, I needed a group of people that has a lot of experience. I need a group of people that don't have a lot of experience. And I need a group of people that is from the territories that I'm trying to help, so people that aren't from the Western English-speaking part of the world. So I'm getting all of those together and asking them to put together a good amount of content, and then I'm having it translated.
Maybe writing the articles in their native language and then being translated to the other languages?
So the idea is that we get English written content and translate it to the local languages, and then eventually, hopefully, it will flip around when people in those territories have the sort of context of international game development. They'll be able to write their own content, and we'll translate that back into every major language in the world as well.
So can you just, again, say the website, and do you have a Twitter handle, and where can people find out more?
So for now, it is still a placeholder page because we're working on this in the background. It's a much larger project than I initially anticipated. Like, you know, as a game developer, a lot of the problems that you run into are problems where you say, you know what, we're going to fix this. I'm going to sit down and we're going to look at how you can fix this. But there are a few problems that are on a larger sort of like social or cultural scale, and they're not just things that you sit down and fix. And I came to the project with an attitude of, we're going to sit down and fix this. But it turns out that crossing language barriers, crossing cultural barriers is a lot of work and takes a lot of consideration. So it's all taking a bit longer than I originally anticipated. But it's something that I'm passionately working on together with Sarah Almale who currently lives in Los Angeles. And we've been working really hard on getting it ready. But for now, I mean, if you bookmark gamedev.world, so that's the full website. It's not gamedev.world.com, it's gamedev.world. Because nowadays you can buy .world or .design or .review or .recipe.
.Rami, surely.
.Rami doesn't exist. .arrow exists. I really want a .arrow one for my air travel, but you're not allowed to buy that unless you're an airliner.
You could be an airliner.
Yeah.
I'm not an airliner.
I think you are an airliner.
Maybe secretly, I'm a transformer. But yeah, so it's an ongoing project at gamedev.world.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to continue the conversation, but are you trying to wrap it up subtly?
I was kind of like trying to wrap
He's really subtle.
by asking also, but there's no Twitter for the website, but you've got
I've got a Twitter, yeah. My Twitter is THA_Rami, but if you just search for my full name, like Rami Ismail, or for my company, Vlaambeer, you'll find me either way. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'll continue to post updates there, not just about gamedev.world, but also about the other game development tools that I'm making. So about PressKit, which helps developers create press kits, or Distribute, which helps developers get the word about their game out. Like news about both of those projects are always there. So if you are an independent developer and you're looking for tools or things to help you out, like I try to make sure that I post about them every now and then on my Twitter. So yeah, no, if people want to follow that, then absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And unfortunately, we are out of time on this one. But that's why I've asked about your Twitter and your website so people can follow up with you.
You should probably ask her about her Twitter too then.
Well, that was...
The next thing?
I never said my Twitter when I was talking about
Oh, because we had the mic.
Because you never asked me. Way to go.
That's awkward now, isn't it? Should we do awkward moments?
Is it awkward?
Okay.
So, hey, you know about the train jam?
Train Jam, yeah. Ask me, what would you like to know about Train Jam?
You know,
What is your Twitter handle?
what's your Twitter handle? Hey! What is your Twitter handle? But do you have 2 Twitter handles?
I have a lot of Twitter handles because I got into a phase where I really liked making Twitter bots for a while, but I don't know if those really count.
No, your own Twitter handle, the one
Yeah.
that people can, like, you know...
Yeah, so my Twitter is Miss Minotaur, MSMINOTAUR. Minotaur is a really hard word to spell, I've discovered, but I'm getting a lot better at it. But then Train Jam also has its own Twitter account if you just want to follow up with only Train Jam news, and it's just at Indie Train Jam.
See, she's got 2 Twitter accounts.
I mean, I have @Darami, I have @Vlaambeer, I've got @DoDistribute, I've got
Do you want me to go through all of my Twitter bots?
Please do. This is going to be great.
No, because we have...
George, what is your Twitter handle?
Yeah, George, what is your Twitter handle?
Or if people want to keep track of Radius?
Well, oh yes, the Radius one is @Radius Festival. That's easy, so please do that if you want to know what's going on here. My own Twitter handle is @GeorgBacker, but it's GeorgBacker.
There's no E at the end of George.
There's no E at the end of George.
They ran out of ink when they were doing his birth certificate.
It's just the Microsoft wasn't... The microphone wasn't working at that point. Oh my God.
That was a really good joke.
The Microsoft wasn't...
Yeah, so me, Lucy, and another person, Amit, we made Mambo in a hotel lobby. And yeah, it's kind of
Nice to meet you.
yeah, it was really fun. It's essentially a minimal Smash Bros type game.
I'm less okay playing and holding a microphone, so there's an issue.
Why don't I just talk... or are you going to hold...
Well, I mean, he needs to talk.
That is true. Hang on a minute.
This is perfect.
So I don't have to talk.
Okay, so we're going to use the A button and the D-pad.
Yep.
So you press the A button, bring down the machine. You press A, you cycle through the colors. When you're ready, press start.
I love that sound effect.
We designed it to screw around with people that can move the timer.
That's cool.
Also really mean. Hey, Joe.
Okay, I'm done now. I'm done. That was you. Don't look at me.
Is that the game, by the way? That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah, this is the whole game. Okay.
Does anybody regret putting this in yet?
No. Go on, you can do this, you can do this. Oh my god.
That was a really hard game.
That was work.
So the middle levels are easiest. It's probably best if you go through all the second one.
So you started with an easy game, okay. And all these different symbols are different stages,
Yeah.
and those are the ones you get by default, or okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we just go off and play.
Yeah, let's start. Okay, so the A button has 3 levels of charge, like 3 attacks.
Okay, so
Press
3
it once-
attacks.
Press once to release you 1 attack. Hold it a bit longer and release you another attack. And hold it a bit longer than that, release you another attack. You move with the D-pad up to jump. You then knock people off the stage. That's it.
So it's all about like pressing the A button in several stages.
Wait, I'm lost. Where am I?
You're the colour that you've selected.
Wait, but I'm not jumping. I thought I could do things.
Up is jump,
Up is jump.
and there's 3 jumps.
Oh, maybe in here?
So you have to sort of like knock each other out.
Yeah. The blocks are almost like a shared health for everyone. So once they break, you then a couple of things there.
For the record,
What's
I'm
this?
also-
What's this? What's this thing that comes up and wiggles its little feet?
Oh, that's kind of like a respawn machine.
Ah.
I'm also not good at Smash Bros, so I just want to point that out.
So how many people have worked in this game? I'm gonna
3
3.
people.
And who's the best?
We are all simultaneously the best.
That is a very diplomatic answer.
This is a game about friendship.
About destroying friendship.
And what's the, if you want to describe this game, like to somebody who's like into some like games, what would you say? Like a couple of sentences you would say about this game.
Minimal Smash Bros. That's it really.
Minimal Smash Bros. That's it.
Well, it explains it, so.
That is true. That makes sense. Cool. I mean, have you got any more of these sort of like collaborative? You can screw people over even before you start the game. Is there like a pause menu that people have to decide that they have to agree on before they can continue the game, or is this kind of like is the start screen in that sense?
Well, the game's still in progress. Well, we haven't finished it yet. So perhaps we will add more things to annoy people.
Ah, crazy. And do you? So, what was the reason actually you did in the beginning of the game? What's the reason that you had this this thing where you can screw people over the time? Is that to sort of like aggravate each player a little bit so that they go into the game completely aggravated, going like, oh, okay, I really want to win.
Honestly, it was completely spontaneous, and Sean just went, I want a button that you can undo to annoy people, and then we did it. It was completely just okay. We didn't really put much thought into that.
I love that sort of like I love this logic behind things here. This is amazing. And how are you finding the game? How is it? How are you doing well?
I believe I'm not doing well. I'm trying to hit things.
Rami, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just figured out that there's an overcharge.
Yeah.
You can charge too much and then nothing happens.
Oh.
I also just died. I think I'm just going to blame you, George.
Me? Well, that's
Yeah,
what most
for the
people do.
scrap.
So is the game's still
Whoa,
development?
whoa, whoa, whoa,
We're
Oh my
taking
God.
too long.
Yeah.
Is it a quick game as well? It's meant to be like quick games. One game goes quite quickly, and many games, many quick games.
Once you die,
Yeah, I mean, so at the moment, oh god, sorry.
That's all right.
This is, oh god, okay, yeah, it's this is just the multiplayer aspect of it. We're planning a single player as well, which we cannot disclose information of because it's not made yet. But yeah, so this is just quick matches to destroy your friends and probably their friendships.
Awesome. So when is the game out? Do you know any potential release dates? Don't go into that screen because this is going to be the best of the evening. Sorry, did I hit you? Sorry.
Again?
Yeah, it's the second time you've hit me.
Oh, I'll have to move over here. So what? When is the game going to be out? What platforms and where can people find out more?
So we're hoping at some point next year, hopefully early next year. And we are talking to Sony at the moment, so hopefully PlayStation first, and then we're going to try and get it on as much stuff as we can, like Steam and maybe other things, hopefully.
Awesome. That's very, very cool. I'm liking this. I really like the look of it. It looks like you people are all stressed out in a really cool way. So I think I enjoyed watching this. The question is, did you enjoy playing this?
Yeah, it's absolutely a game with timing. It feels like figuring out which attack you want to use when is kind of like that. That's going to take a lot more time for me to really get it in my fingers. But it's fun to play already, even though I'm just mashing buttons. So that's usually good when you can clearly see that there's depth in a game, even though you're just playing. And the destruction of the levels is really cool because it means you kind of have to like figure out what a level looks like by the time you're done with it. So yeah, no, this is fun.
Did you win at the other way? Did you win?
No, I did the exact opposite of winning.
So did you let Rami win so he doesn't get all upset and be like,
I mean, I've only won game so far against Adriel.
Wow. Well, where can people find out more? Is there a website? Did I ask for that? Actually, I didn't. Where's the website of the game? Where can people find out more?
Our website is thedangerouskitchen.co.uk, which is our company name. And yeah, everything about Mambo's on there.
Thanks very much, people. I'm just going to... there's no subtle way of ending this because you're clearly so engrossed in this game. So I'm going to say a big round of applause for those people here because clearly they are... It's going to take a while to get on stage. Thanks very much, everyone.
I'm from Zagreb, Croatia, and I'm part-time in development.
What's the other part?
Normal developer.
Oh.
Yeah, I work in Ericsson time, and my hobby is developing games.
Oh, cool. And
So you're going to be showing us Minos Saga. Can you tell us what Minos Saga is?
Well, it's a puzzle game, and it's mixed between Vienna type of games and fast games. And we can.
Yeah, why don't you just show us?
Go on.
So Adriel, how do you feel that this game almost feels like it's like your Twitter handle?
It is almost a minotaur.
Yeah, Minos Saga, Minotaur.
I'm realizing I don't know the etymology of minotaur, but is this the same etymology, minnow?
I don't know.
there's quite a lot of levels, I've just realised. If this is all the levels, then there's a lot of game in this game.
Are we just going to play about this one to start?
Yeah, we're gonna play all.
I like the art style a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
Also, you're not very good at your own game. You haven't got 3 stars everywhere. I just want to point that out.
This is just for
All of those stars are randomly selected.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
This
yeah.
is a random selection.
I love the art. The art is beautiful. So did you do the art as well?
No, I bought the art and I bought the audio.
Oh, wow. Where did you buy it? Did you buy, like, did you...
I have a friend.
Okay. Well, then let's start.
Level 2, let's go.
So, okay. Basically, we have a left and right side of the game. In the left side, we are seemingly seeing something like Tetris, but it's.
That was a really good cover right there. Yeah.
You see, there is a round circle inside it. There are no squares.
Yeah.
So the main part is that you have to build this this object on the right with these elements that are falling, and you drag and drop it in the place. And
Oh, you can rotate it.
So that's why it says click to rotate at the top.
yeah, this will help us rotate.
I like how heavy it is.
I really like how his little ears waggle like a hippopotamus.
He was like, there's some nice rotation going on there. That's what he thought. That's what he thought, honestly.
And now we're new to play something.
I don't know.
So she's going to win this game, clearly, Rami, because...
Yeah, she's going to do way better than me in this one.
So basically, all you have to worry about here is time. You don't have to worry about falling elements or something like that. You have to worry about time on each level. There is more than 200 levels at this moment. And
Are they all handcrafted or randomly generated?
yeah, they're all handcrafted by me. I personally done all the levels.
Are they
It's a little bit hard
Yeah.
with mouse because it's for touch.
Yeah.
So it's puzzle game. You have to build something, but it's also fast gameplay because you have to think fast. Because these elements are falling and you're losing them at each second, and you have to think, okay, what to do next.
Did you just make this impossible?
No.
No.
No, it's totally possible. Don't worry.
So you have to put the,
Yeah, you need the 2 blue ones.
Any...
or you can use this thing. It's one element. So the game has its name over this one element cube that is called Mino. And the main character is Mino, and the saga is his story to rebuild the world. He is traveling through all the continents in the world, and he's building this lot of structures.
Look, I got a star.
We also only had 7 seconds left on level 3.
But look at the positives,
Yeah, but it's really
Rami.
hard. It's really
Yes, it
hard
is.
when
It's
you
really
when
hard
it's
to
hard on the mouse. It's hard on the mouse. Watch out.
So, yeah, I mean... wow, that's... Look, you're losing time, Rami.
This game is out, so it's available to download for free.
Oh, nice. Is it free or free? Is it Rami free or is it industry free?
I don't know what Rami free is, but it's free to play all levels, and all you have to worry about is some commercials. Of course, you can buy to get rid of these commercials, and that's it.
Well, that's, I guess, if that's a fair
free.
deal.
That's
free, yeah.
Unless you don't want commercials, then it's
Then it's,
Not
how much is it if you want to remove the commercials? $1. Yeah, that's like,
that's free.
that's free.
That's less than a cup of coffee.
That's
Less
less,
than 1 cup of coffee, you can keep your developers fed.
that's less than the sugar that you pay for the coffee in some countries, I think. I don't even know.
Pay for sugar?
No, in London probably do. I don't know. I just made that up. Ignore me. Just don't listen to me. So it's free, essentially. It's just $1. So yeah, you're right. Where do you pay for sugar? Well, sorry. You don't pay for sugar. I don't. So, and what's the website? Where can people find out more about the game?
They can find out more about the game at minossaga.com. There is also Twitter and Facebook page, Minos Saga game.
Okay.
Twitter and also at Facebook. And that's it. You can download it for free at Android and iOS. It's for also iPad, tablets, and so on.
So, and how many? Because you said you're from Zagreb, yes. So, how many game developers do you in Zagreb? Like, is it a big community? Is it a small community?
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
50 or more game developers. So it's pretty big, and we are growing now.
This is this is one of the microphones that's not behaving very well, and it's we don't know why. So we talk about Zagreb very briefly. So there's a large community out there, and you said about 50 developers.
Yeah, I think so.
And well, that's awesome. I mean, like, can you name a few games that people might know?
Solar Solstice.
Yeah.
Minos Saga.
Yes, of course.
And that's it. I mean, this is my first game.
Yeah.
And I was at two of these meetings. So with game developer meetups in Zagreb, and
It's a very exciting place. Like most of the country, there is a very exciting place. I was visiting a few months ago, and the community there is growing. It's a young community, but
Yeah.
it's definitely growing. They have a bunch of larger developers there as well. So there's this nice interconnected sense of like small developers, larger developers. They're all kind of working together. They're starting to organize events
yeah,
in the city.
lately, yes.
That's awesome. I mean, is it like when did this sort of like start? Over the last couple of years, or is it?
I would say like last 2 years.
Oh wow, that's amazing. You know what you should do? Like organize a European train journey throughout Europe. Like that would be.
I've looked into that.
Did you?
It doesn't work.
We have too much pretty cities.
Wow, that's the best answer.
That's a way more good sounding answer than the answer I have.
What was the answer you had out of interest?
That Europe is too small and all the trains are not connected and
You'd have to transfer like 4 or 5 times.
Like the longest train ride that I found that makes sense, because also like the nice thing about Train Jam is it ends at GDC, so there's always sort of an ending thing.
Yeah.
So like if you end at GDC Europe, you have to end in Cologne, and the longest train ride I could find that was feasible starts in Moscow, and you transfer like 3 times, and it's a 36-hour train ride.
Oh my god. Wow, that still sounds cool.
And there's no power outlets.
Okay, no, that's not good.
There are some trains.
Yeah, some of them, but not all of them. Like Train Jam in the U.S., we don't have internet, but you can sort of get away with that.
Oh
But
yeah.
Because
not
we have power.
Yeah, but not having power outlets sort of.
That is not useful. You need hamsters in Amsterdam.
Exactly. Yeah, Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. Ooh, new ideas.
Oh god.
Oh god.
Game developers in Amsterdam. That would be fun.
That happens more often, I think, than one would think.
Yeah.
So, and if people want to find out, so you mentioned your website. You have a Twitter handle as well.
Yes. Minos Saga Twitter. Minos Saga game at Twitter.
And is there like a website for the Zagreb community? Is there like a dev website?
Yes, game developer meetup. We have Facebook, I think, Twitter, and I don't know. And there is a website also. Yes.
Cool. That's awesome. I mean, thank you very much for being here at Raiders. Is it you're 2 days here at Raiders, aren't you?
Yes.
And tomorrow as well.
I'm on Saturday.
Saturday. Oh, cool. That's going to be amazing. And it's nice to see people from all over the world turning up at Raiders with different ideas, which is very, very cool. Unfortunately, this was it for this episode of the Radius Night Show here on Octo, but it's not the end. There is more to come. If you want to see more games, then tune in to the next episode, and until then, have fun.